about abstract pearls too. So I'm going to give you my little spiel on them. Won't be as long as talk, but hopefully some tips for you. And this is geared more towards writing that abstract that you're trying to get to a conference. So let's talk about that. All right, same disclosures, nothing has changed. All right, so we had why write a manuscript. Any takers for why write an abstract? Yeah, that's really the main reason. Okay. All right, but to summarize your manuscript, right, because you want to get it out of there, right? So for your manuscript, you need an abstract as a teaser and must be able to stand alone. All right, so again, most of this is focusing on for conference, but I don't want to gloss too much over the abstracts for a manuscript. A lot of the same stuff's going to apply, but the importance is different for why they matter, right? For your manuscript, a lot of times when editors are deciding, am I going to send this paper out for review, all they will look at is your abstract. Okay, they will read that and decide, okay, this is worthy of going out there. When your paper is published and people are reading it and trying to figure out the importance of this paper, I don't have a good estimate, but my ballpark is at least 90% of people are only going to read your abstract, all right? Figure out what your key findings are and whether that matters. So make sure that the key stuff that you want to get out there show up in the abstract. You can not possibly say everything that's important from your paper in that abstract, but that's your chance to control the messaging and what's out there. All right, so make sure that that's important. But yeah, to get accepted to a conference. If you want to go to a conference, go to a meeting. All you're judged on is your abstract, so make it count. Okay. Okay, so I showed you pumpkins in the last presentation. Today we're going to show my kids' Halloween costumes because this is always falls during Halloween, so it's fun. Oh yeah, but another point though too. Cardiology fellows, I don't know what's their record. Cardiology fellows, they win the costume contest often though. I mean, no pressure, but there have been some really good costumes. Is there a costume contest this year? Can we bring back the costume contest this year? It's not too late. There you go. Okay, gauntlet is thrown. All right. All right. So pick your conference. Where are you going to present it, and where are you going to go? This is just one that some of our pediatric fellows, cardiology fellows, have been to. There are others, obviously, for different specialties. Some may overlap. Many of them do not. With this cardiology one, but you'll talk to your mentor and they'll come up with timeline for what works for you and where you should start. Try to aim to be presenting based on your level. Okay, don't shy away from presenting. Most of these conferences, we're pediatrics. All right, don't be scared of presenting at a conference. Most people in pediatrics are pretty nice and understanding, and especially with early career people, they want to encourage you, and we want to see early career people presenting at meetings. Okay. But important is to know when is the deadline. Usually it's about 4 to 6 months before the conference. So, like if you want to present at AAP, which is in October usually of every year, you have to be submitting an abstract in April. That's a long time. So, think ahead for where you want to go. Based on the conference, review the different guidelines. Different conferences have different guidelines, right? Just like different journals have different guidelines for what they want in their paper or in their abstract. Different conferences do. Most of them will have some limit of how big it can be. For some, it's a word count limit, like 250 words. Some, it's a character limit, like 1,900 characters. Some will let you put tables or figures in an abstract. You probably haven't seen tables or figures in an abstract in manuscripts, because they don't typically do that, right? The tables and figures are part of the main paper. They're not part of the abstract. Many conferences will let you have tables and figures as part of your abstract. That's pretty cool. And they'll even publish those if it's a conference that publishes the abstracts. So that's a good way to get some things, you have yourself stand out, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And then how's it organized? Some conferences will just say, give us an abstract. And someone will say, we want it in this format. When you're picking your conference, I really look down upon it, and conferences will say this, they don't really enforce it, but as someone who's seen this happen, it's really not okay to present at too large conferences, right? So for instance, it's tough. I know it's a game, but you're taking away the opportunity from someone else when you do that. For instance, AAP, you have to submit in April, and the conference is in October. American Heart Association, you have to submit in June, and the conference is in November. I've commonly seen people submit the same abstract to both places, hoping they get to at least one of them, and then they get into both. And then they present the same abstract at both. And, first time I see it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. But when I see them again at AHA, I'm like, someone gave you bad mentorship, because you really shouldn't be doing that. You are taking an opportunity away from someone else who should be doing that. So pick what you think is the best conference to go to. Now, that's for large, big international conferences. Smaller conferences, if you want to present something there and then also present at the big national one, totally fine. Okay. All right. The Children's Pediatric Conference, which is in June usually, still gonna be around June, and abstracts are usually due in like January or April this year. Okay. Why did I have January in my head? March. I have March is what I was thinking. Okay. March or April. Totally fine to present something there and then also present it at a big national meeting. Not a problem at all. Okay. If you submit an abstract, so let's say that you submit to AAP in April and you're going gangbusters on your paper, you're ready to submit it, and you want to submit it to pediatrics, and you're worried like, I've got this paper written. We made a lot of progress. It's ready to go out the door. I'm not going to wait for the feedback from the conference. We're good. We want to get it out there. But conferences don't want you to present work that's been published before. Okay? I don't know how preprint works into that. We'll find out. But you can still submit your paper, and if the moon and the stars all align and your paper is accepted in just a couple of months, and the journal wants to publish it online, you can let the editor know, hey, it's great that we're accepted. Would you mind holding on publishing this until the week of our conference? All right, that allows you to be in good cahoots with the conference, because this stuff's not going to be published ahead of time. But then also for the editor and the journal, they actually kind of like that if they can present timely stuff. They can be publishing something that's being presented at a major conference that week. Every year, for instance, Circulation, has their journal that's published the week of American Heart Association conference is full of manuscripts that are being presented that week at the conference. So it's okay to do that. All right. Pick your section and focus area. So this doesn't apply to every single conference. Some have it, some don't. Some you're just applying to your category. Boom. I say this because, for instance, I'm going to use the cardiology example again. American Heart Association, it has different sections that you could submit to. You can submit to electrophysiology. You can submit to congenital heart disease, which is what most of the pediatric ones go to. You can submit to congenital heart surgery. You can submit to adult congenital outcomes. Lots of things, sections that you can submit to. They break them up. So my mentor once told me, there aren't a ton of surgeons who go to the AHA conference. They have their own surgical conferences. But your paper is looking at long-term outcomes of people who had surgery. Submit it to the surgical section. Boom, got accepted. Would have gotten accepted to the regular congenital heart disease one? I don't know. But he thought there was a higher chance if you go to the one that has fewer people applying to. So again, all part of the game. You're trying to win. Just know the rules. But young investigator competition, most conferences will have some sort of thing like this, especially the ones you're looking at. If the conference you're applying to has young investigator competitions for the abstract, by all means do that. All right. That's usually not a whole lot more work. Sometimes it is. So you need to find out if it is. So if there's an option, like if you submit to AAP, and use that example, there's just a checkbox like, do you want to be considered for the young investigator competition? That's an easy yes. Even if you don't get into the young investigator competition, you can still be chosen for a poster or something else like that. It doesn't mean that you can't go for the other reasons. You're just, increasing your chances of getting into a cool thing. Figure out if the manuscript is needed. For AAP, if you're accepted into the young investigator competition, then they say, they'll let you know in like August, say, hey, conference in October, we want to draft your manuscript before then because we're going to review that, and that's going to be part of the judging criteria for the young investigator competition. Fine. American Heart Association, theirs is, you want to submit the young investigator competition in June? Great. Your manuscript needs to be submitted at the same time as your abstract. I think that's a little excessive. Not all places require that. So just check and see what they need. See if there's different submission dates. But the young investigator competitions, they can only help you. They can't hurt you. And even if you don't win, if you get selected to be part of it, you can still put like on your CV, finalist for the Young Investigator competition. It can show up and still look good. But when you're submitting these abstracts, understand the review process. So you don't see many costumes for me here. This is, I should have said, this is my son, Carter, who was born. Carter was born during my fellowship. He was born in 2008. My daughter was born when I was a fourth year, 2011. We'll do a quick side tale. I had my Spider-Man costume underneath here. So when Spider-Man came out, the original one with Tobey Maguire, I got stopped all the freaking time by people who thought that I looked like Tobey Maguire. And it was like, I get stopped at airports, I get stopped in like convenience stores, movie theaters, all the time. And so what I did as a resident, and I get stopped by kids, of course. So when I did as a resident, I kept Spider-Man stickers with me. And so when kids would stop me and look at me, I'd give them to them. So the best was a kid who came in for like a cold in his Spider-Man pajamas, 5-year-old head to toe. And another resident saw the kid and told him, you know, Peter Parker's working here today. So she came and got me and I gave him some Spider-Man stickers, and like his mouth just dropped when I walk in the room, and he didn't say anything until I started leaving the room and said, Mommy, I just saw Spider-Man. So anyway, sorry, I digress. So, but yeah, I don't wear the Spider-Man costume. They've kept changing the Spider-Man now, so I don't know. We'll see what the new Bond looks like. All right, so understand the review process. All right. You know, these abstract competitions, these conferences, they have a panel of reviewers often that they'll have, right? And they'll have some key elements. So, you know, I've reviewed for a number of conferences, and what will happen is they'll send me a whole bunch of them and say, hey, can you review these 50 abstracts and score them 1 to 10, where basically they can get 0, 1, or 2 points for each of the key elements to get a total score of up to 10 or something like that. And then I'll average mine with other people. And they'll say, great, and you got 2 weeks to do this, which really means 2 hours before it's due, I start looking at it, right? So they're going through a lot in a very short amount of time. So things need to stand out. And, you know, things that I'm looking at are, is the title interesting? Do they have the purpose? Are their methods fine? I'm going to go through a lot of the things in this talk, where if you follow all those, you know, at least if you get a reviewer like me, you'll meet all those key things and the things that they will score on. So let's start talking about the title and what will we get. So titles for manuscripts I talked about earlier. Titles for abstracts are going to be a little bit different, okay? Because titles for abstracts, you really need to start grabbing people's attention with the abstract, okay? You know, you want to grab the people who are setting up the conference, their attention to, you know, have you there, and the reviewers to, hey, your one stands out from other people. But then once you're at the conference, you want other people to read it and say, oh, that's a talk I want to go listen to, or a poster I want to go look at. Whereas papers, you know, many people will scan the contents. You want your keywords there, but it's not as urgent to have something stand out. A lot of times these will be the same, sometimes different. So things that I like for abstract titles, you know, ask a question. You know, if you have an interesting question there, you know, you're going to conferences to learn. All right, so is there a question that people have and you've been asking it in your thing? I'll give you examples. State a controversy, you know, even if it's, you know, totally contrary to other published findings. What have people found before? Is there something unique about your paper or your project? Did you use this really nice big data set or have a lot of different centers involved? Something that leads validity to what you've done. Mention that. So example, transcatheter versus surgical closure, atrial septal defects in children, a value comparison. So there's not a whole lot of value stuff. It's a hot topic, but you don't see a lot of value talk. So we wanted to make sure people understood that we're not just talking about outcomes here, we're talking about value. So we made sure that was in the title. Newborn screening, you know, for congenital heart disease. Is it time to change the algorithm? Right? There's the question and kind of the controversy, like, hey, should we change what we're doing? Association of congenital heart disease with autism, a case control study. You know, that's a little, we don't see many case control studies in pediatrics, especially by fellows. So we wanted to point out, this is different. This is more than just a retrospective observational study. These three, I will tell you, were all won young investigator competitions. Okay? This one was this was a finalist at an American College of Cardiology one against adult competitors, and these both won at AAP. Pediatric cardiology evaluation chest pain. Are we meeting pediatric expectations? There's the question mark again. We could easily have called that title like a survey of the evaluation of chest pain in pediatric cardiology clinic. That's not nearly as interesting, especially if you're at a conference, than something like this. Okay? And then this one, long-term transplant-free survival, a study from the Pediatric Cardiac Care Consortium. That's a big 50-center consortium. We wanted people to know that this was coming from a big, large data set. All right, introduction and background. So they're going to be short, 2 to 3 sentences max. Okay, you have limited space in your abstracts. People aren't coming to your abstracts and looking at you to like read your introduction. They're there to learn some new knowledge, and introduction is not where new knowledge comes. So you need it there to kind of set the stage for what you're going to go over. Don't use up a lot of your valuable space in the introduction. First sentence or two, you can have a very brief intro of the broad problem. Final sentence, you have a purpose, objective, and aim. Have something there, all right? When I'm reviewing these abstracts, if I don't see a sentence in the introduction that says the purpose of or the aim of this was to compare, contrast, or to learn, or something like that, I'm dinging it, all right? It's going to go down in my book. Like a lot of them will just say, oh, long-term survival of, hypoglossal left heart syndrome is unclear. Therefore, we use a database to study long-term survival. It's not really a good purpose, like, or an aim. Like it looks like a fishing expedition there. I want something clear and focused to what you're doing. All right, some examples here. So the ASD ones, condylometrial major septal defects are most common with transcatheter and surgical options. There's the big overview. Both options have excellent results. The value of the 2 procedures is unknown. Okay, there's kind of our gap. The purpose of this study was to determine what offers better value. All right, that's all you need for a background or intro. All right, and you can get good points there. This one, I'm not showing everything here, but this is about the newborn screening one. But the objective of the study showed 2. Determine the impact of newborn screening in a large tertiary care birth hospital. We worked with Northside. And then to model what would happen if we changed it, right? Going to the next step. This one I show because this one split up background and objective, all right? Both of these are AAP, but they have different, they're not as fixed on what you do. So this fellow said, I'm gonna have a background section and then an objective which really stands out and people can see it. I kind of like that if you can do it, all right? Kind of in your face, this is what my background is. Okay. Spider-Man, see, comes along. All right, I love the docking stuff, and I don't know, my daughter was that one year. All right, methods. Start with the type of the study. All right, I would like everyone right now, please, to raise your right hand and repeat after me. Okay, and state your name. Okay. Promise that I will never, ever describe my research study as a chart review. Okay, please. I see this too often in abstracts. We performed a chart review to compare experts. Chart review may have been how you got the data, all right? But that is not a type of study, right? A chart review is not a type of study, okay? So you can have a retrospective cohort study. It sounds really fancy. That's usually what you're doing in a chart review. You know the outcome. It's already happened, right? These kids were hospitalized and left, all right? So it's retrospective because you're going back and you're looking at different groups. Those are your cohorts. You're doing a retrospective cohort study, right? So 90% of what y'all are doing is probably a retrospective cohort study. Call it that, all right? Once I saw someone do something really cool where it was a large data set that was collected over a while, it was for a primary question. This is a secondary analysis of that. And so they said, we performed a retrospective cohort study of prospectively collected data. That sounded cool. I totally stole that. Case control study if you're doing that. Descriptive studies if you're doing that. So, I usually kind of say, don't do too much descriptive studies. You're kind of asking these questions. But in the era of COVID, like MISC, like a lot of people are doing descriptive studies. Like we need to learn. We need to explain what the lay of the land is. So that's okay to do if you're doing it. Just call it what it is. Don't just say we did a chart review of patients with MIC. No, you did a descriptive study. sounds better. Include broad details in there. Definitely want to see exclusion criteria, at least key ones. You don't need to have every little thing. Years of the study. I often see this left out. What were the years of it? If I'm someone looking at it, I want to know, is this recent data? Is this really old? How have things changed? This becomes even more important in the era of COVID because that has affected so many things in different areas. So I really want to know, is your data pre-COVID era or post? Because things have changed. And then where is the study happening? Include broad type of statistics. If room lists confounders, and I have in here a note, and I'm going to show you in a little bit, you could potentially hide some stuff in tables or figures. So we're going to talk about that a little bit because you are limited in your text and what you can actually write there. But sometimes in your tables and figures, you are not. This is a style thing. What voice? Classic teaching has always been things should be in passive voice. This was done. This was reviewed. I found this boring to read, I'll be honest. I like the active voice. It's okay. Use whatever you want. I mean, honest, this comes down to use what your mentor wants. But I prefer active voice if you can. You don't need to put IRB stuff in the abstract. Definitely should be in your paper, in your method somewhere, but you don't need it in your abstract. All right, I'll read some of this. This is low. So this is the value one, using data from the Pediatric Hospital Information System. So there we have our data source. Years, 2004, 2012. Okay, and what did we do? Our outcomes of interest were this. So he's just defining them. What were the total charges? How do we and what were our basic stats? And what did we find there? Great. Newborn screening results were collected. Get to all that, and then a simulation study was performed because that was kind of the really cool nuts and bolts piece. The first part was descriptive. What did we see? And then we did a simulation study. Okay. This fellow went with the passive voice. She still won, so it's okay. We performed a 1 to 3 case control study. So same what the case control study was. U.S. Military Health System, and the timeline, October to September, and it goes into more detail, which I'm not going to go into all that. Okay, so you can hit a lot of the key points very quickly and easily, but have them all in there. All right, results. Yes, that's me back there as Dumbledore. Told you you'd see a lot of Harry Potter. There will be more. All right, results. Always start with your overall numbers. I don't get into this here, but I see this a lot, especially comes up in results. I should have meant this in the manuscript too. This is another thing why you can go with the editing, the GEMS editing group. I see a lot of people start sentences with numbers. I know it makes sense and it sounds good. It's just style, different manuals of style of writing. You shouldn't start sentences with numbers, right? So instead of saying something like 100 patients were enrolled in the study, I'll often say, of 100 patients enrolled in the study, 60% were male, and then just have something there, go that way. So you can still get it there, but there's little tricks to avoid that. Get to the key results quickly. All right. You don't need to summarize everything there in that abstract. Some of it's going to be in your tables and figures. And then, if allowed, use the graphs and tables. If graphs and tables are allowed in the place that you're submitting to, and not all do, but if they are, please, I implore you, use them. That's an easy way to stand out and to get a lot of information there that's not so easy to write in text. So, well, let me go back here. So tables and figures. So for instance, use American Heart Association example. They limit your character count to 1,900 characters. Any table or figure that you put in counts as 250 characters. That's it, right? You can say a lot in a table and figure, a whole lot more in a picture or a table than you can say in 250 characters of words. All right, so use them and it helps you stand out. So examples of some tables. So I'll show you this one. This is actually one from when I was a fellow, done many years ago. But what we did here is there's a study of critical congenital heart defects, and everyone has their own idea what is a critical congenital heart defect. So we knew we had to say somewhere in the abstract what defects we were including and what that meant. It took up way too much space to put that in the methods. So this made it a footnote in the table. Cost me 0 extra characters, all right, to do that. I already have a table. Table's 250, whether I've got a footnote or not. to put it all together. Okay, you can hide some stuff there if you need to, but it's important to have it in there. This is another table that this is the autism study, just looking at different percentages and your p-value there. So he can say a lot here. To write all this out and put all there would take up a lot of space and would be kind of repetitive to read. But if you've got it set up on a table and it looks nicer, it's easier for people. But this one, they also let you have figures. Oh, so you could do a table and a figure at AAP. That was cool. Not many places that you do both. If you had figures, then you can start throwing in color and making things look really pretty. Use that. So, but he was able to show some different odds ratios for each defect, comparing them all at one time to get all the results all compared to each other at the same time. And then they also use the little trick of defining everything down here. So you can do a lot with figures and tables. Definitely use them in your abstracts if you can. Conclusions. If you sense a theme here, my kids are never on the same page, right? Like my son was Darth Vader, then my wife was Leia many years ago, later. And then we've got Harry Potter sometimes, not others. My son was just lazy this year. Conclusions. Summarize your key point, okay? You've got that focus, you've got that objective, you've got that primary purpose in that background intro. Your conclusion should, address that, okay? Did you find it? What did you find? Don't just restate your whole results. Have like a key take-home message there. The conclusion must be supported, though, by results that you have shown, right? You can't, show some of your results, then make your conclusion based, or include something that wasn't shown at all. It's got to be in there. It sounds straightforward, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes people, they've written the paper and they're trying to shorten their abstract for this, and they don't, realize, oh, that key thing that I'm basing some of my conclusions on isn't actually in there because they have other stuff instead. And then add at least one other option or one other sentence to your conclusion. I really like implications you're finding. What does this mean? What should I take home for this? How should I change my practice? How should policy be changed? What should happen here? All right? You can compare it to other findings, especially if it's different from other stuff, and say something like, well, these findings are different than what's been generally believed or been shown. That's kind of cool if you can show it. If you say further research is needed to corroborate these findings, or further research is needed to understand it, it's weak. It's good to have something there. It's better than nothing, but it's weak. Everyone knows there's always more research. No study is the end-all be-all. All right. So to give you some examples here. This is the catheter one, the AST one. Both transcatheter and surgeries have excellent mortality, but transcatheter procedures had lower length of stay and rates of infection, resulting in lower overall costs. So your take home is, for children who are eligible, transcatheter closure and ASD may provide better value, at least in the short term. Boom. There's the implications you're finding. All right. If you're on the fence about what to do for a kid, you're going to get the same outcomes for both. ASD is a better value. Go there. Or the cath lab is a better value. Go there. This is the CCHD screening one. CCHD screening may detect many new cases, because that was in the descriptive part, but it can detect other causes of hypoxemia. So the first part of that study was descriptive, and that's kind of showing what it found. Modifying the algorithm, that was the simulation part. To have only one repeat pulse oximetry test instead of two may help detect other significant disease without a substantial increase in the false positive rate. That was key take-home message, and that was important. Then she closed with, further efforts to improve the sensitivity of screening are warranted. So that's not saying, hey, you need to understand our study. That's saying, hey, the sensitivity was kind of low here. We noticed that. And that's a practice change, not a research, not a further research is needed. This is the autism one. Children with CHD are at increased odds of developing autism. Specific lesions at risk include these. So he's summarizing his key findings, that we showed in those figures and tables. And then I kind of like this. He came up with, our findings will be useful for counseling parents and caretakers of children with CHD. That's your take home here. All right. That was the implications here. But hey, families need to know this. And, we wanted cardiologists and pediatricians to know, like if you're counseling families and they're wondering, or, their kids at risk for this data can be useful for that. All right. More Harry Potter, as you see here. It's my daughter decided to be Hermione. Which reminds me a lot of Hermione. It's always kind of creepy. My son was like 11 or 12 when this happened, and he and his friends all decided to be Sesame Street characters. It was awesome. This year they're thinking of Smurfs, although he hasn't gotten his costume yet. If you follow the tips above, don't be upset. There's a lot of randomness to it still. Okay, you've done your best, but there can be randomness in what people can find. Work on data and figures. Go get more data. Go do some other stuff. You can submit other places. Resubmit somewhere else. You know, we've had 2 fellows who were rejected from American Heart Association, who then worked to get a little more data or looked at it a little bit more, and then went on and won Young Investigator Awards in the American College of Cardiology. So those 2 conferences are equivalent conferences. Why you get rejected from one and awards at another, there's a lot of randomness to it. I was talking to some people outside earlier. You need to have thick skin in this sometimes. Rejection happens, and it's not always your fault. Sometimes it might be, usually not. A lot of times there's randomness to it. Don't be upset about that, right? Make the changes you can. If you get good comments back for a paper, you won't for an abstract. See which ones seem reasonable to you and that you can do and address. Implement those and submit somewhere else. It's okay. Key points. So in your abstracts, be very clear, be very focused. Don't want to be all over the place with the abstracts. Be interesting, right? There are a lot of, abstracts being submitted. You want to make yours, not just be ho-hum, and be memorable, okay? Your title, your figures, your table, those are going to help you be memorable and stand out from the other 50 abstracts that person's reading in an afternoon. All right, thanks. And this was last year. After being in Hermione, my daughter decided now she wanted to be Hermione after the Battle of Hogwarts. And my son, again, was lazy, so it's okay. All right, thank you all very much. And I have time for any questions if people are interested. Have anything? Yep, either one. So I know someone asked me outside about manuscripts, like how many journals do you typically submit to before you get accepted? I don't have good metrics on that, but that kind of comes back into the thick skin thing, and there are a lot that goes into it. Being rejected 2 different places before you're finally accepted is not a big deal. That's kind of par for the course. I think the record I've heard of someone getting rejected some places like 6, then it got accepted somewhere else. That's fine. It's all right. If you've got a really, really great paper and you're okay with rejection, it doesn't bother you too much, and you can just roll with it and go to the next one. Aim high. The great thing is about those big places, some of the top journals, is that they tend to give responses relatively quickly. All right. So if they're not interested at all, they'll usually let you know. And also, the higher tier of the journal, the easier it is for them to get reviewers and to get reviewers to submit stuff quickly. So you won't be delayed too much by aiming high. It's okay. If it's your 3rd year and you need something published, so you can say you publish something for the board or get something done, or even if I know that once people leave after their 3rd year, they don't work as much on their journals because they're transitioning to some new place. So I want it wrapped up before they go. If they're not submitting to them, then maybe we'll aim a little bit lower. So I'll give them a place where I think, oh yeah, you've got at least a 75% chance acceptance rather than like a 10%. It's okay. Other questions, thoughts? All right, I'm easy to find. My email is osterm@kidsheart.com. If you send it to my Cho, I don't know if I'll ever see it. If you send it to Emory, it'll come to my Kids Heart. But osterm@kidsheart.com is the easiest way. Good luck, and thanks for having me.